involved in the tax auction, and I contacted the people at Suffolk County to handle the auction, and for some reason, this is out of the couple of properties that in different villages, this was one property that the county was willing to talk to the village about purchasing. So I indicated, we had discussed this once before, and I indicated to the county that the village was interested in buying the property, and sure enough, the county agreed to take it out of the auction. And I think you had, Mayor, you had some, you were involved in this also, which I really appreciate. And this was a major accomplishment for you and the village. So the county took it out of the auction list and offered the property to the village to purchase for what the county calls its cost. I have no idea how they come up with this cost, but the cost is basically $5,100. I mean, it's either $5,080 or $5,180. I have it in an email, but that's the basic amount. And plus, we have to do a tax adjustment at the closing, the same way that you would do when somebody buys a piece of property. So my suggestion is that we have a resolution to buy the property for up to for $6,000, included plus the tax adjustment, and then after we buy it, you could do whatever you dedicate it to open space or passive recreation, whatever you want to do.
Okay.
But we need to approve this in a resolution, and then I'll get a contract from the county, and we can sign the contract and go ahead.
The county representative might come tonight, he said.
Okay.
So he sent me.
Jason or somebody else?
Ed.
Ed?
Okay, otherwise he was going to stop by Village Hall this week. So,
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, this is great. I mean, I don't know what you did in the background, but several other villages tried to do the same thing, and they were turned down, and this was the one that went through. So this is all set to go.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else?
Just a thought. When we were talking about the bulkheaded corner at
Yes.
at the other beach, at the foot of Washington Street, we have those large angular rocks that's almost like a jetty behind the seawall that Nor'easter dug out. I don't know whether they were there and they were pulled away or they were never there. It was just grassy knoll that went down to. But it goes back about 8-10 feet or so. It's just cut away. There's nothing there. And I'm thinking that we should, as long as we are talking about restoration or dovetailing it with when we start to finish up with the dock construction, whatever, to see if we can get some. It's not just fill. It's not landscape ties. It would be something else. Maybe more of those big angular rocks. They're like a jetty. It's hard to imagine they would be pulled away. There's nothing there.
What did they got?
Well, they may have never been there. I don't remember what was there. Maybe it was just sand and grass.
In the wall?
Behind the wall.
Okay.
It wasn't a depression, it was just sand and grass.
Sand and grass. Okay, so
The
we
only
should
thing in
fill it
there now
in
is
with.
the filter cloth.
My concern is that, years
behind the
ago,
concrete footing?
the seawall collapsed. As you walk the beach, that seawall collapsed, and that was from a storm. And it kind of just undermined it and just kind of knocked it down, threw it away. So, and I think that's the area where there's some of the steps going down, so it's probably a little more secure. But it's for safety's sake, it's just a hole. Put more sand there.
Anything else? Okay. We have time, so Rich, you want to do your report?
Sure.
Before we start the public hearings.
Okay. So because we had so many questions and comments that came in, I'm going to stand up here. This way it's covered by cameras so that people will watch it on the republication we put out. So first of all, thank you for letting me have a chance to address the board. And as part of my environmental report for the year, it's kind of like a subset on a certain matter that came up recently as a result of a University of Stony Brook school newspaper article that was published. Generated a lot of questions in the community that we want to make sure that people will have a chance to get some kind of answer. We've got a lot of input from a lot of different places, a lot of different sources. So just trying to get the right information out, and then I'm going to request certain things from the board at the conclusion. So first off, It's not unusual for both the village of Poquott and myself as environmental commissioner on these. We've had 15 years to get involved outside of the village. We've done that on a number of occasions. We did that with Fort Jeff Power Plant expansion for the mini plants. We did that with issues relating to the repowering of the Fort Jeff Power Station. We've done it with the Ugly Pond down on 25A, and then more recently with the air quality issue that we're facing right now that we talked a little bit about before. So kind of want to just put that out there that even though this is something that's happening that's affecting Port Jefferson Harbor, it's still something that really affects our quality of life, and so everybody would like to have some sort of an input on it. And I want to present you what I found, what my findings were, considerate of everything that came in. So I'm going to read this and I'll submit this to Joe to put it into the record. So the State University of New York Stony Brook Hospital discharges wastewater to a sewage treatment facility operated by Suffolk County on the campus grounds. Okay, it's known as Sewer District 21. Okay, it's again operated by county employees and DPW workers. The plant provides tertiary treatment, which uses nitrogen and phosphorus to remove inorganic compounds like heavy metals and mineral grit. Okay, and then chlorine to remove microorganisms like bacteria, viruses, parasites, etc. All right, and following this process, the water from that plant is discharged to the Port Jeff Sewage Treatment Plant, which is Sewer District 1, also operated by Suffolk County and county employees. And that's done through a pipe which runs, I presume, under 25A. Very hard to find a map of that pipe.
I think it goes, can I?
Yeah, please.
I think and I only know because I lived in a house next to this, but
Sure.
I think it goes through the Suffolk County Water Authority property that is behind the drive-through coffee place. You know, behind the drive-through coffee place and up on Norris Lane is, I think, and then it goes down Highland Avenue, which is behind the firehouse.
You're talking about Cuppies?
Yeah, Cuppies.
Okay.
So there's a road. It's not the road directly behind the Marios Hill, the Marios Bluff, but it's one road south of that.
Right.
If I'm not mistaken, it's Highland Avenue. I think it goes underneath Highland Avenue.
Okay.
It's actually under that road, and then it goes the straight one down.
Okay.
I don't believe it's under 25.
Well, that's part of what we're going to request. We want to get a copy of that because that's going to be important as we go further. So, so basically, after it goes to the Port Jeff Power Plant, the Port Jeff Sewer Treatment Plant, it then gets discharged after, again, being subject to tertiary treatment out of a outfall pipe, which is located about 520 feet off the village's eastern beach branch out into Port Jeff Harbor. Sewer District 1 is identified by the county as a pump station with a force main, and it has two parts. The pump station, which is on Barnum Avenue, which is further down into the village, and then the treatment plant, which is on Beach Street, which is the one that's fairly close to us. Right? And it's from that treatment plant that the water gets discharged out that pipe. So in 2013...
So Barnum
sure.
Avenue has a pump station?
No, it has the treatment plant portion.
Barnum?
Barnum. Yeah, where it runs back from the pump station back to Barnum.
Oh,
So
okay.
I think at the pump station where it collects the water from the university. Again, hard to tell because no one's really giving that information up. But we have some leads on that through some engineering companies. So in 2013, Stony Brook professor Larry Swanson published a document with the U.S. National Library of Medicine National Institute of Health entitled Iodine 131 in Sewage Sludge from a Small Water Pollution Control Plant Serving a Thyroid Cancer Treatment Facility. And that document presented results of testing which was done on various treatment plants with the university and a couple of other people. But its conclusion was to list that Stony Brook Hospital's concentrations had the highest of the tested results. So they actually had results of tests, okay, which kind of surprised me. So in January 2017, the county moved to do a replacement of kind repairs to the SUNY Stony Brook treatment plant. All right, the designs of the plant were not published at all. We tried finding them. What was published was just this. The project was designed to address an expanding campus and to meet the new nitrogen discharge standards that came about as a result of Long Island Sound Study. The decisions driving the upgrades were made by the Suffolk County Council on Environmental Quality. That's again where the road kind of diverged because the chairperson for Suffolk County Council on Environmental Quality is again Larry Swanson. A story was run in the Stony Brook Statesman on October 22nd of this year, quoting Professor Swanson as saying that radioactive iodine was being discharged via the plant to Port Jeff Harbor. Okay, the story was retracted on November 7th, just a few days ago, when Professor Swanson made comment that he did not make the claim that anything was discharged. So what's clear from my perspective at looking at it is that the student that wrote the article kind of didn't understand that the plant is receiving the waste, but that doesn't mean it's being discharged necessarily out the plant pipe, okay? So as iodine is inorganic, as I mentioned before, inorganics should be scrubbed out from the secondary, tertiary treatment process. So in theory, it should be dropping out, representing a threat more to the Stony Brook sewage treatment plant operators than anything else because of the half-life of the compound. So the workers up at the plant in Stony Brook are being most likely exposed. But there are very specific regulations in New York State for discharges of radioactive material into sanitary sewage systems. Part 380 of the Code Rules and Regulations of the state, which is entitled Disposal and Release of Radioactive Material into Sanitary Sewage. So still, if the material is present in the plants, it is possible for a discharge via the pipe to the harbor, although not really likely. But during events like Hurricane Sandy, where different treatment plant stations were knocked out, there are some features of the Port Jeff station that are below the flood level, and those are the pumps, discharge pumps, and if things get knocked out, these systems fail, and then you have direct discharge of water. So again, we don't know that it's necessarily in there, but we also don't know that it's not in there. So at the end of the day, they're not allowed to release the material. Okay, if radioactive iodine was actually in their discharge water, there's been some published reports and people writing in the newspaper saying that it's not a discharge effluent standard failure, and meaning it's not a violation of the discharge rules. It actually is a violation of discharge rules. It's a discharge violation of rules that are outside of the permitted rules that people are citing in a lot of these articles, which are discharges to class SA, SB, saline water bodies through a SPEEDIES permit, which is basically a state pollution discharge elimination system permit for a permit to pollute. Okay, like we have one for stormwater, so the university has one for their sewage treatment plant, as does the county for their discharges. So while it's not directly covered as a compound that is regulated under that regulation, the fact that they don't test for it actually means it's not authorized to be discharged. Okay, so if you're not testing for it, they're saying they're not detecting it. Well, they're not detecting it because they're not testing for it. Okay, so the fact of the matter is, if it is being discharged, it does represent a release of a hazardous substance, and it is a triggering mechanism for a circular hazardous waste response action. And we need to be aware of that, because in the event it is happening and we find out that there are discharges being made, either through operational problems or some sort of construction problem with the plant, then it would certainly be something we want to report, because then we'd be subject, to the circular regs, and we could get money to help, investigate what's going on as a community that's impacted by it. So we'll keep an eye on that. Again, no evidence anything has been discharged, but the supposition is more than just the supposition that's there. We know people are taking drugs or tracer compounds that contain the radioactive iodine. They're ingesting it, they're urinating, it's going to the sewage treatment plant with residues. That residue is ending up at sewage treatment plants as per Larry Swanson's study. Okay, we just don't know that it's necessarily getting out of the sewage treatment plant. Make sense? Okay, so there are other compounds that are radioactive that are used for the testing, and no one has mentioned any of those. Okay, so we need to really take this as a serious issue, because some of these other compounds have longer half-lives and have a much higher potential of getting out into the environment through these plants. Okay, so the events leading to the story, they do suppose overall the hospital may not know what they're doing with their sewage treatment plants and what their discharges are. Okay, it kind of raises questions as to who's steering the ship up at the hospital. Okay, and who's steering the ship at the county as far as making a decision on what to test for and what not to test for. Okay, and it does seem that Larry Swanson has a lot of control over what's happening. Okay, so there's been a number of sewage treatment plant upgrades in the last 3 years. Normally we'd be getting information on that through the secret process under coordinated review. But what the Environmental Council has been doing is they've been calling it a type 2 action and saying it's replacement in kind, and avoiding having to give any information out to the surrounding communities by doing that. So, and that's a problem, because then we're not even having a chance to look at it and comment. All right, so this has led me to study what else may be coming out of these sewage treatment plants. What isn't being treated and causing employee exposure issues what's actually coming out of the pipes. Okay, the immediate thought is pharmaceuticals. Okay, what about the drug residues that are being discharged through the pipe? Tertiary treatment does not do anything to clean up the pharmaceuticals. So that's a big problem. And most of the drugs are organic in nature and cannot be abated through chlorine exposure. So a quick search of the topic of pharmaceutical discharges on Google led to an inordinate amount of recent discoveries by groups all over the country of drugs in their waterways. I can tell you that 10 results came up. All 10 were from 2018, which is very rare on a Google search. Okay, and while there are no quantitative standards for the specific compounds that we're finding, there are narrative standards, as I mentioned before. There is a general standard for, quote, general organics, and unless that's triggered in your species permit, they don't really test for it. So it's something that, you know, it wouldn't take much for them to start thinking about it a little bit. So given all this, I'd like to make the recommendation to the board as follows. One, obtain the discharge records for the Port Jefferson Power Plant for District 1. 2, reach out to university and county to discuss if there are any other radionuclides being used at the hospital other than iodine-131. Then ask if they're aware or are they following procedures required under Part 380. Okay, because it doesn't seem like they are following those procedures from what I've seen. Okay, 3, reach out to university and county to discuss what, if anything, is being done to prohibit the discharge of pharmaceuticals. 4, request from the state DEC that the treatment plants develop a general organics effluent standard to help detect and control the discharge of any pharmaceuticals. 5, work to see if there's a beneficial use for the wastewater that is being generated at the plant that would help keep it from entering the food chain. I say the food chain because those pharmaceuticals and those articles are all highlighting the fact that these drugs are ending up in the shellfish in the immediate area. And once again, we don't test for those compounds, so we don't know if our open waters versus our closed waters have pharmaceuticals in them, which could mean you're taking, you know, gene replacement therapy or, you know, any kind of therapy that happens at the hospital you could be actually getting involved in by eating shellfish, right, as a possibility. Again, not saying it's happening, but it could be. Okay, so 5, so if there is a beneficial use, we might want to have participation in some kind of roundtable discussion with other stakeholders in this matter, okay, because there are other stakeholders, all right, so immediately to mind is Suffolk County Department of Public Works, the Suffolk County Council on Environmental Quality, the Village of Poquott, obviously the Village of Port Jefferson, the State DEC, and the hospital staff, and maybe university people from the University Hospital, and maybe a qualified third-party conservation group such as CTUC, who I've worked with before, and we can work with CTUC to maybe even get a grant, okay, to study this, okay, as far as what's actually coming out of the pipe, that we don't have to rely on anyone else's data. So 6, request from the county a copy of the map showing where the pipe connecting to District 21 and District 1 is located, and determine where it runs, and determine what, if anything, is being done to make sure it's not leaking. Because again, if that process removes it at the treatment plant, if it's running through that pipe and it's leaking somewhere, we could have a radioactive plume that's affecting us, and it's going to be south of us. And since groundwater flows from the south to the north, that could be running back onto us. So that's a particular concern, as far as I'm concerned. And then I think we should formally request that we receive notice for all permit applications and modifications affecting operation of wastewater treatment plant 21 and 1 in the future, so that we don't get bypassed through the secret process through a clever trick. Okay, so I would like to offer my help working with any of the board members to get each of these 7 items. Okay, and I would like to maybe go and item for item and pick different board people to work with to get this done. And maybe there's some volunteers we can find to help with this, and the other officers in the village. But I would like to request, just to make sure that we're covered through insurance, that the board at least vote on it and kind of vote to say that it's okay for me to pursue these things as, you know, as we move forward, so that it's covered under our directors and officers policy. So having said that, if there's any questions?
Which is, what about like Mather and St. Charles? Do they have anything to do with it? I know they'll probably go through the Port Jeffs.
Yeah, they probably run through the Port Jeff plant, so they could have involvement too. I don't know what their treatment system is. I've worked in a lot of hospitals on the island, and a lot of them actually have on-site sanitary, so they're just discharging to basins underground. You know, that issue is being really addressed by the New York State Department of Health.
Yeah.
they don't get along well with the DEC.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So there's an awkward gap there that we're trying to fill, because we've been raising issues about this in on-site sanitary systems privately through, doing assessment work all throughout Long Island and trying to qualify whether a hospital is polluting or not. And there's very little guidelines. And right now, State Department of Health is starting to come up with some guidelines on it.
Yeah, well, I think that you should put it out with the board email, and you should start going forward. We know we have interest from the Village of Port Jasmine, stuff, DEC and CEQA.
Right.
CETUC, right?
Yeah, and that would be for the roundtable discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll give this to Joe.
You know what, can you email it to him so that he can put it, it'll be.
Want me to email it to you? I'm gonna give it to you there too, just so you have it.
Including the fire department as a stakeholder.
Sure.
So Richard, are you asking for a resolution just?
Yeah, just to say that we're going to pursue
Not a resolution, but just
Just
to
something,
say
a vote or
forward.
something, just so
Yeah.
that
Okay,
there may be some feathers that get ruffled along the way.
yeah, we should.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, I adjourn the Gorky meeting for a second.
Second.
You want to move on to the, maybe you want to wait a few minutes?
No, it's only 4 minutes.
Yeah.
I'll wait for him.
Okay. Okay.
Alright, check it out.